My family knew about my husband's infidelities for years and said nothing so they wouldn't bite the hand that fed them, but they bit mine because I am keeping 50% and they are left with nothing. Rick, 38 years old, and I, 37, had a marriage of 8 years, 10 years together, and we have 2 children, 2 boys, the older 7 and the younger 4. Rick's family has always been my family, and I mean that literally, because I actually lost my parents in a car accident when I was 6 years old. I remember very little about them, but I do remember that they were visiting Rick's parents, let's call them Bob and Mary. My parents were very good friends of theirs since Bob and my father went to high school together, then to university, and eventually started a business together, so they had gone to visit them, and on the way back home the tragic accident happened where the car went off the road and fell from high enough that they did not survive. To this day I cannot drive down that road, not only because of the memory but because of the fear it causes me. I had stayed home with the babysitter because I had a cold, so that cold saved my life, although at that moment I didn't see it that way because my parents were my world and many times I wished I had been with them, although when I was a bit older, because when it had just happened I was still too little to understand everything. I was sent to live with my paternal grandparents. Bobby and Mary visited me often and sometimes I also visited them. Rick and I were good friends because we were close in age. He also has a brother, let's call him Jerry. Anyway, our families were always very close and Rick and I practically grew up together. I always had a big crush on him. Later I lost my grandmother when I was in high school, a few years later I lost my grandfather when I was in university. By then I practically had no one else because my maternal grandparents had died when I was much younger. Rick's family became my only family. Whenever I came home on vacations I stayed with them, and even when I started working I stayed in touch. They were truly my family even though we weren't related by blood. I always thought of Bob, Mary, and Jerry as my family. They were like my own parents and brother, and of course with Rick it was different because I saw him as someone I wanted to marry. But for a long time he never made a move. Even though I went to his house often and sometimes I was sure he liked me too, he never said anything to me until my 27th birthday. But to be honest, the way our relationship started and the way he asked me out should have made me question things, but I was so excited to be with him that I overlooked all of it at the time. For context, on my birthday he invited me to dinner and told me that since the moment he met me he had always known that eventually he would marry me, but he had never made a move because he was too young to commit to something so big. He knew that once he was with me there would be no one else, and that idea scared him, which is why he had never said anything before. But now that he felt older and wiser he thought he was ready to settle down, so he wanted to ask me out and hoped I would accept. I mean, who asks someone out like that? It's weird. I've teased him about it many times over the years, but now that I think about it it seems strange and is no longer funny because it was a big red flag, but that's how our relationship started. We dated for a year, then moved in together, and after that we got married. We were together until recently. I thought we were a happy family until I found a phone a couple of months ago and that opened my eyes. I had decided to clean the house, including his office, even though I normally don't go into that place. During all these years of marriage I respected his privacy, but since I was doing deep cleaning I wanted to clean the office too. I thought he would be happy, so I didn't tell him and it was just a surprise. Well, the surprise was for me because I ended up being very surprised by what I saw. And that's how I discovered the disposable phone he kept in one of the drawers of his desk. It made me curious because he is a businessman and always has the latest phone model since he really likes technology, but this one was old and worn, which intrigued me even more. It sounds like something a special operations agent would use, not a businessman. When I turned it on after taking it out, it didn't have a password. That seemed even stranger to me because he always has passwords on all his devices. But anyway, I decided to check the phone just out of curiosity because at that moment I had no reason to suspect him. At first it seemed like a normal old phone, maybe 5 or 6 years old at most, until I opened the messaging app. That was when I found a long list of chats with women, plural, making plans, exchanging very affectionate messages, and then him disappearing from their lives at the end. Those chats went back almost 6 years. No matter how much I scrolled through them, they seemed endless. It took me quite a while to reach the first conversation on the phone. The first one had been with a coworker, and from the messages I could deduce that he had met up with her and slept with her several times. That had been 6 years ago, after our son had already been born. It lasted a few months and then he ghosted her to move on to his next conquest, and the more messages I read, the more I realized it wasn't just with a few women, there were several over the years, sometimes at the same time and from different places. It took me a very long time to process what I was seeing. As I kept reading, I noticed some chats were very short. Some women he had met in bars, others on dating apps, some were old friends, and yes, you can imagine. I think I just sat on the floor reading those messages. I wasn't even in the state to cry because I couldn't believe what I was holding in my hands. I tried to explain it to myself, I tried to justify it, I even thought that maybe it wasn't him. But that was impossible because by reading the messages I realized it was his way of speaking, it was definitely him. In fact, he still had some active affairs at that moment because the latest messages had been sent and received just a few hours before he left for work that same day. One was with a woman he had met on a business trip, he was flirting with her, probably trying to set the trap like with all the others. He told her that his wife didn't mind because he had an open marriage and that they could see each other whenever they wanted. To others he said he was single. I suppose that was how he managed to convince them, by lying shamelessly. I felt so disgusted that I decided to leave him immediately. Luckily, I remembered to take that phone with me because I still had a clear head. After spending about an hour with the phone, I started packing my things, then I grabbed everything I could, including my children's belongings. Then I took them both and decided to drive for a while before going to Bob and Mary's house because honestly I didn't know where else to go. I don't have many friends and obviously I am not in contact with my own family since I was never very close to anyone on my parents' side. So I went to Bob and Mary's house. By the time I arrived I was sobbing hysterically because at that moment the full truth hit me. When they opened the door I simply collapsed. When they asked me for an explanation I started babbling and handed them the phone. I thought they would be shocked when they saw what it contained, but even while crying I noticed they didn't seem that surprised. In fact, they just looked at me with expressions of concern and if anything it seemed like they were just waiting for me to get up from the floor so they could talk. That was when I realized this probably wasn't new information to them, that's why they weren't reacting the way I expected. So I stood up immediately and asked them if they knew anything about it. They tried to deny it but by their behavior I realized something was wrong. I started pressuring them and kept demanding the truth. Eventually I even said that if they had ever respected or loved my parents then they would tell me what they knew. That was when they finally admitted the truth. They had known all along because they once caught Rick in their house with another woman shortly after our son was born. Of course they confronted him at that moment. He apologized but also said that I had become a very different person after becoming a mother and that he needed a change of pace, and for that reason instead of resenting me and hating me he did this while turning himself into a good husband and father. He tried to justify everything. Rick, Bob, Mary, and Jerry, the same people I had considered my family my whole life, kept that secret from me because after all Rick was their eldest son and he was successful, he often helped his family financially. They admitted they stayed silent because they owed him that, because he did many things for them, especially financially. In fact, whenever they weren't home he used to bring other women there, and they never told me anything although they admitted they didn't like it. I suppose that fixes everything. They lent him the house to use it as a hotel so he can have a comfortable place to sleep with his prostitutes, but since they didn't like it everything is forgiven. At the end of the day they said it wasn't their place to say anything, that they couldn't bite the hand that fed them. Yes, I'm not joking, that was their defense. At least my husband wasn't sleeping in a dirty place, although I wasn't very sure about that if it was his parents' house, and after what they had told me I didn't know how they weren't ashamed to pretend to be the victims here. I was the victim, and there wasn't an amount in the universe of excuses to twist the situation. Disgusted by their explanation, I snatched the phone from them before they could do anything. Then I took my children once again and got into my car. They tried to stop me, they tried to tell me it wasn't their intention to hurt me, but it no longer mattered because the damage was done. So I got into the car, and after driving for a while I decided to check into a hotel a bit outside the city so they couldn't find me. That day was probably the worst of my life, but that was a while ago. Since then many things have changed, because thanks to the help of a few friends who were still by my side, I was able to find and hire one of the best divorce lawyers, and he has been fighting on my behalf. And let me tell you, he has shown why he is one of the best. When I filed for divorce, my conditions had been quite clear and fair. I wanted reasonable alimony and partial custody of our children, and of course child support had to be substantial because I had given up my career to raise them. After conceiving our first child I wanted to keep working, but he was the one who convinced me to stay at home and told me that he would take care of everything, and yes, he took care of everything. Just as he takes care of his floozies until they no longer serve him, and now he's found a new one. I never questioned anything because I was happy enough being a stay-at-home mother of two, and although it was hard work I thought it was rewarding because at the end of the day I had my family. But after discovering all his affairs that was no longer enough for me because in life you need more practical things, you need money, and I think what I was asking for was quite fair. But he turned out to be extremely stingy and wanted to reduce alimony to practically nothing and said I could go back to work, knowing perfectly well that after an 8-year gap on my resume it would be hard to support myself with the kind of job I could get. In fact, he wasn't even willing to accept the amount of child support I had demanded, saying it was too much, and he also intended to fight for a custody agreement where I would only have the children with me on weekends. Basically, he wanted to take everything from me because I refused to go back to him and forgive everything he had done. He wanted to use his position of power as blackmail because he was the one earning money, but it wasn't going to work. I refused to give him another chance, to go to couples therapy with him, or to fix things, because I think after 6 years of being cheated on without knowing it I had earned the right to be angry and I had earned the right to leave him. So he and his lawyer planned to punish me by leaving me practically without money to survive and making me live without my children most of the week, just so he could pretend he was doing me a favor by letting me have them 2 days on the weekend. That was when everything changed for me and I decided I wasn't going to be so lenient. My lawyer and I decided to go all in because he didn't deserve any concessions from me. It was hard and quite a long process, but recently we managed to defend our case well enough for me to receive 50% of his assets in the divorce, and I couldn't be happier. The last part of the paperwork is all that's left and then everything will be finalized. That's what I'm waiting for now. I could have chosen to take revenge through the children too, but that's not who I am, so I still allow him partial custody of them, but now he is the one who has to settle for 2 days a week. Yes, but I don't think he cares that much, at least not as much as he cares about the money he's going to lose, because that's all he has been complaining about this whole time, foaming at the mouth, trying to overturn the ruling in his favor somehow, but it's too late. For me it's funny because I feel like I'm finally getting my revenge for the 6 years he cheated on me, and I don't feel even a little remorse or regret for what is happening to him. However, in recent weeks the problems have shifted to what I thought was my family, Bob, Mary, and Jerry, and the 3 of them have been begging me to help them somehow because they depended mainly on him since he was the most financially stable of all. After the divorce proceedings began he was very upset with his family for not having controlled me. Not that I'm defending them, but by that point there wasn't much they could do. That caused them a lot of problems because they had depended too much on his financial help and now they don't know what to do, so they have been coming to me asking me to help them somehow. Their situation is quite real, I know for sure because it's been like that for years. I knew they received financial support from Rick, but I didn't know to what extent, and now I can see that it wasn't just pocket change, it was a lot. Mary has never worked, she has always been a housewife. Bob's business, the one he used to run with my father, was doing well toward the end, so he sold it and retired. A couple of years have passed and I thought he should have savings, but I don't know what is happening with his finances. And as for Jerry, even though he is almost 35, he has never been able to hold a job. He says he is a writer, so he keeps quitting every few months until he really needs to work again because according to him working interferes with his creative process. Basically their financial situation is quite complicated, and I suppose without Rick and his financial help they will be able to survive, but they will definitely have to cut expenses and adjust their lifestyle, and maybe at this point in their lives they can't do that. That's why they have been begging me to help them somehow. They haven't said it explicitly, but I think they expect me to take Rick's place and help them financially, or somehow reconcile them with Rick, and those two things are equally impossible for me now. Any money I receive from the divorce I will set aside for my own use and for my children's, of course. I'm not going to use it to help anyone else besides us, and much less the people who lied to me for so many years. And helping them reconcile with Rick, that is completely out of the question. So I've been ignoring all the messages, calls, and emails, but recently I received one particular email from Bob reminding me that they were the ones who stepped in and helped me in the past, that they were always there for me like a family after I lost my parents and grandparents, and that this was the least I could do for them in their moment of need because after all Rick was their son and of course they had to stay quiet because they also owed him something. Bob claimed that it had also been very difficult for them to remain silent for so long, to pretend that everything was fine and hope that someday it really would be, and that I should also see that side of the story. And he has a point, they were there for me and helped me when I was a child. However, that does not give them the right to hide something so important from me. In the past they would have been my problem because I loved them like parents and a brother, but at this moment they are like strangers because that is how they treated me. So this is my problem. Edit, the part about my parents' company went to my grandparents, who sold it to be able to raise me. Thanks to that I was able to go to college without going into debt and I never lacked anything. Update 1. Of course it is not easy to restart life at my age. I am almost 40 now and I was with someone for a decade of my life. The last 8 years I dedicated myself to being a good wife, a good daughter-in-law, and a good mother, and now I am finally managing to be free, even though it is costing me a lot. But even so I don't think I would change it for anything. The last 8 years have been wonderful, I cannot deny it, but they have been a lie and now I know it, and I cannot go back to a state where I didn't know it, so the only thing I could do was move forward, and that is what I am doing. I want to be a good mother to my children, and the only way to do that is by being true to myself. I won't say I am doing something very brave, but I do think I am doing the right thing. Anyway, thank you to everyone who commented on my post and gave me support. There are many people out there with good hearts. As for the situation with Bob, Mary, and Jerry, my plan has not changed, keep ignoring them until they get tired. No, it's not like they are going to get anything good from me, so I will keep blocking all their attempts until they no longer have the energy to bother me. And I think my silence should be a response just as valid as any other, since that was exactly what they did for so long, wasn't it? They stayed silent all this time for 6 years or probably more because I don't know how long all of this has been happening. The phone shows one thing, but there could have been other phones, old messages that were deleted, or affairs that were never recorded. I won't deny that they helped me and that they were truly my family all these years, but the way they failed me this time, I don't think I can get over it, and I don't think I can forgive and forget the way they expect me to. No, because my soon-to-be ex-husband was once affectionate with me doesn't give him permission to cheat on me. The good things don't erase the bad. So I feel that the only response and the best response I can give them is absolutely nothing, because I cannot say what they want me to say, and I'm not going to do that to myself either. I would also like to clarify that I have had medical tests to make sure I don't have any disease, just to ease the minds of those who asked in the comments. Update 2. Well, only a couple of days remain before the divorce becomes official, and I truly cannot wait any longer. The custody agreement is already finalized and signed, so for now that doesn't worry me. I just have the last-minute nerves because everything my lawyer and I have been working on for the past months is finally going to bear fruit and I can't wait. Of course the only person who is deeply unhappy about all this is Rick, and he hasn't bothered to hide it. He is on all his social media, and people have been saying that I am a gold digger, that I ruined his life, and that no matter what happened between us, no matter how many women he cheated on me with, nothing justifies my decision to take 50% of everything he has worked so hard for in the last 6 years. I find it very entertaining that people think I have no right to any of that, especially when I was the one in the back seat making sure everything behind the scenes was under control. I was the one who took care of the kids. I took care of the house. I took care of him. I did everything possible to keep the family together, even if that meant sacrificing my own career. So if people really believe I have no right to 50% of everything he worked for, then either they are fooling themselves or they are really ignorant. He can keep ranting about me on social media and people can believe whatever they want. At the end of the day, I know that what I am doing is the right thing, and that is the only thing that matters. This is for me and for my children, and no one is going to manipulate me emotionally into thinking I don't have every right to ask for what corresponds to me. On the other hand, talking about his divorce doesn't seem to be a good strategy. He doesn't say what caused it, but it's not as if people by now don't know. I don't think associating yourself with a divorce where you repeatedly cheated is the best plan. At least no one can say this was my fault. He is the only one doing all this. Update 3. The divorce was signed and beyond my ex's displeasure there was nothing to report, but after a month from the signing things have started to get ugly for him and consequently also for his family. I am not a business expert, but if you have a company with employees, clients, and suppliers, and you openly attack your ex, with whom you also cheated for years, that is not exactly the best publicity. Now the complaints are no longer about me but about how the business is doing, although according to him indirectly it is all my fault because he claims I left him without capital to get through this dry spell. The funny thing is that I haven't done anything. The finances of his company should be independent from his personal ones, and I didn't get anything from his company. If his company is doing badly, it is probably because he cannot keep his mouth shut. It's like Tiger Woods complaining that his game isn't the same because his wife caught him cheating. It's not the years of cheating nor the countless women you slept with, it's probably my divorce. So if before my ex wasn't willing to help his family financially, now I can see it will be even worse, which is no longer officially my problem because I have no ties with them of any kind. Update 4. A year has passed since my divorce was finalized and honestly I have never been happier. I still have to see him unfortunately, but only on weekends, and even then it's only for a few minutes when I drop off the kids. We don't talk, we even avoid looking at each other as much as we can, and we only speak in case of emergency and only about the kids. I haven't heard anything from Bob, Mary, or even Jerry since my last update. I don't know how they are, sometimes I miss them, but well, after everything that happened I think this is for the best. My ex has had to sell his company because the negative response to his divorce was killing him. I think the new owners have given it a good makeover and it is thriving. Apart from all that, I think my life is going well now. My children are happy, although it took them a while to adjust to this new type of life, but now they are happy with the fact that they have 2 different homes, and I am happy about that too. It is better than one miserable home at least. Looking back, I don't regret what I did. The money has really helped me and I am saving all I can for the future. I am proud of myself because despite not having been in the workforce for almost 7 years or more, I have managed to adapt and I am doing quite well at work. Yes, of course I still have a lot to catch up on, but I have gotten used to working again. It has been difficult, but I have managed to get used to living alone with only my children, so life is good and I am happy.